Okay, so looking at the big picture, why we're here today, the opportunity is clear. Every year, the EU allocates billions of the European level funding to support innovation, from small pilots to large-scale projects. Whether you're working on sustainability or digitalization or industrial innovation, there is funding available for you for sure. But the challenge that we've seen is just as real. The funding landscape is complex and it's fragmented, and often it can become overwhelming for an SME. Many great companies with innovative ideas either don't know where to start or they spend months chasing the wrong opportunities. So that's where we come in. The solution is not just about applying for one grant. We believe the solution is building a smart, long-term approach. And you will see me throughout this webinar keep back at this long-term approach. The CEE region is actually one that has very high potential and to attract funding, but statistically is where funding goes not so much, and not because there isn't availability of funding, but because for some reason for CEE region enterprises, it seems that this funding world is more complex or can be more difficult. So what it means really is to navigate the EU funding world strategically, plan wisely, and combine opportunities creatively, because EU funding only works when it's aligned with your innovation, your TRL, and your business growth strategy. Sorry, I keep pausing. I have to also admit people, which I'm happy to do. So both these European digital innovation hubs that are present today here, Hopero and AI Gaming, are here to help you understand the funding context better and to transform it into opportunities for you. At Civita, we don't just write grant application, as we mentioned. It is our mission to truly empower your companies to grow through funding. And Hopero is also doing that through supporting mostly Slovakian companies, but also through our partnerships, other companies throughout Europe to access this type of funding, and this support can be for free through the EDIC in Europe. This is the reason why we are here today, but to present even further the services and partners of AI Gaming EDIC, I will give the floor to Anna now. Anna? Okay, maybe we'll come back to this. Anna seems to have some technical issues. Anna? No. Okay, moving on then, and we'll come back to this. Anna is the leader of the AI and Gaming EDIC in Croatia, and it is through these partnerships that we can provide this support to European companies also. So we will come back to why and how they can provide this support later on in the seminar. So before we continue and dive deep into the webinar, I think it's important to also introduce myself as well. My name is Ada Țera. I'm an expert in Civita, and I'm currently located in the snowy and cold, though sunny, Romania. As mentioned, Civita is like an international company with offices all over the world. I have many years of experience in both writing successful funding proposals as well as guiding SMEs and consortia in implementing their EU funding projects. My background is also in education, leading and developing academic projects and research opportunities. So it's very important for me to share my knowledge in terms of how to build a successful project that can really help a company grow, because European funding should never be the ultimate goal for your company. And this is maybe a shocker. It should be just a tool for your own company's growth and development. So I will then first go through the slide deck. And in the end, if you have any questions, me or Anna will be happy to answer them. During the meeting, you can already start asking your questions in the chat area, and we can reply at the end. Depending on the time, we can also revert back to you through email or a call. In the first section, so today's webinar is divided into 4 sections. The first section, we will tackle the main principles of funding, and then we will go through various tools, so funding programs available for SMEs at the moment, and briefly go through the most relevant ones. And with very hands-on and practical examples. And then we will talk about something that a lot of SMEs fear is consortiums. So being part of a consortia and how to get there. And in the end, briefly, we will touch on how to get your company ready for EU funding, how to create this funding, long-term funding strategy and roadmap. So in this first section, we will tackle the main principle, that is our experience, and this can be the key to successfully attract funding and really use it for full benefit of your organization. Before we dive into specific programs and the calls, I want to pause here for a moment and pretty much tell you that everything we'll talk about today is based on those 4 core principles. If you understand these, the EU funding landscape becomes much less confusing. So first, it's important to understand your place in the EU funding world. You don't participate in EU projects in only one way. You can be a direct beneficiary, a partner in a consortium, or even a supplier. And we'll talk more about this in a second. Many SMEs overlook these options and they limit themselves. They go straight for being the beneficiary, the main coordinator, or the main beneficiary of a fund grant. Second, you will need to know your technology readiness level, or TRL. This simply means how mature is your solution today, or when you are writing the application. Is it an idea, a prototype, or something already tested in real life conditions? EU programs are very clearly linked to TRLs, and choosing the wrong one is one of the most common reasons that applications fail. Third, you need to match the funding size to your ambition. And Finally, the most important principle for myself and for us at Civita, what we're actually hoping to get for you to get out of this webinar today, think in terms of a funding strategy, not a single call. EU funding works best when it supports your long-term business and your innovation goals. So moving back, principle one, your place in this 3D world of European funding. Why 3D world? Funding world is three-dimensional. First dimension or first option for you is the most obvious one. The white circle here, your company as the beneficiary. So you write the application, you get the money and only you. But EU funding isn't a one-size-fits-all. You don't have to be the lead beneficiary to benefit. You can also have another role, maybe more useful for less experienced SME, the purple figure, as a partner in a project consortium. We will actually be focusing a lot on this today, as I will be showing you examples of such consortia. Then there is another possible position for you, very relevant, especially for startups. That is as a supplier. Why is it important specifically for startups? Because for them, yes, it's important to get funding, but also in the long-term funding strategy, a startup also needs to establish a successful reference for their technology. So you're there as a technology provider, first as a supplier in a larger project, and then you can be the beneficiary, like the technology developer in a more larger project. Companies can receive funding as main applicant, as I mentioned, a consortium partner, or even by selling their solution into funded projects as a supplier. Once you understand these entry points, you can position your innovation more strategically and access, as I mentioned, more opportunities and varied. Principle two is probably something that you are already familiar with. The technology readiness level, or TRL, the maturity of your technology and how ready it is to be on the market, to sell that technology. So here, one of the most common mistakes companies make is applying for funding that does not match their technology maturity. And this has to be very straightforward and honest. Understanding your technology readiness level and where it fits on the EU funding map is very important, because by aligning yourself to the right window here, you can massively increase your chances of getting funding. A lot of projects fail in the application phase when the evaluator says that the TRL level of the application technology is not enough for that funding. And also, sometimes they fail later on because they realize that they're not actually at the TRL required by the project, so they cannot pick up and achieve the objectives of the project. On the left part, you see the academia, where most of the projects with very low TRL lie, because low TRL means that they're still in the The technology is still in the research phase, maybe up to maybe experimental proof of concept, or tested within a very constrained environment, a lab maybe. And on the right, you see the TRLs matching the industry more towards the industry side, where we have solutions that are more mature, very close to market, that have been or will be tested in a real life environment with real end users, and then very quickly can be commercialized. And for each of these TRLs, there is a specific or there are specific funding tools available. Today, I will present several funding programs from Horizon Europe, which vary in TRL levels. And then I will also present two EU funding programs that have higher TRL requirements, the LIFE program and the Digital Europe program. So I will now show you another graph bar, but with money this time, which is also very important because funding is essentially money. So aligning the size of your funding request with your innovation stage and ambition is key. You don't need €1 million to test a prototype, right? At the same time, if you're ready to scale, to commercialize your solution, or you're close to that stage, you don't have to limit yourself to maybe a 50K pilot. The size of the funding you apply for should reflect both your project's maturity and your growth ambition. So smaller grants help you test and iterate, while larger grants can enable you to deploy, to commercialize, and to scale. And in many cases, you can combine them smartly across your funding journey. That's why I said that this money or these funding grants are tools that will help you with the company's growth at every stage. So for small grants, they are usually easier to access. The application is shorter and faster in terms of the grant signing. For larger amounts, for example, for programs like LIFE or Innovation Fund, the time to grant can be about 6 to 8 months. You write the application now for a specific deadline, then wait about 4 months to get the results. And if you're successful, it will take you several more months to sign the grant agreement. So this should be also taken into consideration when applying for this type of funding. But also for these larger projects, you get more money in the millions, and the time frame is longer. So you have projects that last from 3 to 5 years for implementation. So this brings me to my last principle, that of thinking of long-term strategy. As mentioned in the beginning, getting the EU money should not be your main aim. Using this funding as a tool for your company's growth should be. A funding strategy is sort of like a roadmap. Funding is a journey. It is about understanding the landscape of the funding world and then journeying through this world, starting with more simpler projects and then getting to the more complex ones. And to navigate through this area, it is essential to have a map, right? that's where the roadmap is coming from. This strategy should plan your next steps. What is the funding opportunity? What is your time plan? How to schedule your internal work and applying to various opportunities. All these should be based on your priorities at a certain time and that you have for your company, and how these priorities match at that time with available EU funding. And all these should be based on this roadmap. I will show you later on how such a funding strategy could look like and how this roadmap could look like. So you shouldn't just chase the cause, you build a story across your TRL levels and across funding instruments. And that's how you avoid missed deadlines, wasted effort, or scattered results. So now we'll go into the second part of this webinar, where I will present you several tools, several funding programs that should be available for you as an SME. The first one is Horizon Europe. And so we'll start with this one because this is often the most talked about program. You hear about Horizon Europe all the time. It is the EU's main program for research and innovation. It has a huge budget, over 95 or over 100 billion euros are allocated in funding through Horizon Europe. But you often hear about pillars in Horizon Europe or clusters when you read about a call or an open funding opportunity. Think of the pillars as the big structure of the program. The answer to question, what is Horizon Europe trying to do overall? There are three pillars, one focused on science and research, one focused on solving real challenges in society and industry, and the third one focused on innovation and scaling new ideas. Obviously, as an SME, you will mostly be interested in the second and third pillars, that of solving challenges in the world and also on innovation and scaling of new ideas, because those were practical and business driven. Now, clusters sit inside one of those pillars, the second one. So it's when we hear about clusters in Horizon Europe, we only talk about them within the second pillar, that of the societal and industrial challenges. Clusters are simply the themes or problem areas of that EU wants to solve. For example, digitalization can be a cluster, energy, climate, food, security, mobility. These are all themes, topics that Horizon Europe is interested in funding. And as an SME, based on your solution or your technology, you can access funding in one of these clusters when they're available. You don't apply to Horizon Europe in general, you apply to a specific cluster and a specific topic that matches your solution. So in simple terms, pillars of the Horizon Europe define the structure of this huge program. Clusters define the topics and the challenges of the Horizon Europe. But don't let that scare you. The key is not all Horizon Europe is for everyone. What matters is knowing where your innovation fits and which part of the program can help you take the next step. So today we will focus only on the parts that make sense for innovative SMEs, depending on your TRL role. For early stage innovation, one important program that you could look into is EIC Pathfinder. Think of Pathfinder as Europe's version of very high risk, high reward science funding. It's designed for radical, science-driven ideas that could disrupt entire sectors. So very, very innovative. But it is not just for academia, although it's research-based. SMEs and startups can co-lead consortia, especially if they bring deep tech expertise or market vision. So the key here is to be very bold and to have an interdisciplinary thinking. Your proposal must meet all the following essential characteristics: ambitions to have a long-term vision for a very innovative, radical new technology. So if you think that you have that technology or that idea that can disrupt the world and Europe and put the Europe ahead of everyone else, but it's still in the idea phase, so the TRL is low, then this might be a good program for you. Another interesting opportunity that has been launched only last year, it's interesting because it's especially for startups and SMEs from widening countries. It's called the EIC Pre-Accelerator under Widera. So what happened is that European Commission identified the fact that not very many projects win or technologies come from Southeastern Europe, let's say, SEE countries. So they developed this funding instrument, to support very innovative breakthrough technologies to further develop until they can apply for the EIC accelerator, the innovation, the top innovation program. So this Widera, it's an instrument designed for companies that already have a strong idea or technology, but are not yet fully ready for large EU programs like I mentioned, the EIC accelerator. It funds the early advancement of high potential innovations, not pure research, but also not full market deployment yet. So it supports you to get to TRL 6. The focus is on strengthening both the technology and the business side. In terms of maturity, this typically fits companies that are around TRL 4, 5. So you already have something working, maybe even tested in a lab, but you still need validation, refinement, or proof of market fit. A big advantage here is that you apply as a single company. There is no consortium, so that's a plus, which makes this much simpler and faster for SMEs. A typical grant size is around 300,000 euros, and it's provided as a lump sum, which also reduces the reporting complexity. And the funding can cover the regular things: salaries, prototyping and testing, internal expertise, consultancy, travel, and also prepare for EIC accelerator. The goal is quite clear, is to prepare you for the next step, whether this is applying for the EIC accelerator. As I mentioned, the EIC accelerator is the top innovative funding program. Or what you want to apply for another EU program or private investment. Research and innovation actions, or RIAs, calls are about collaborative research and early stage development. Again, this is where many SMEs start to fit much better in Horizon Europe. So accessing research and innovation actions. If they are perfect, if you're still validating your concept, if you're building a prototype, if you're exploring the scientific and technical foundations of your innovation. So the EU uses these programs to support high potential technologies that are not ready yet for market, but could maybe deliver a major impact in the future. These types of projects are usually led by universities as the consortium lead, research center or research and development driven SMEs. And it means a lot of close collaboration with industry to ensure future scalability. As an SME, you could maybe join this type of project as a technology developer or applied research partner, a lab, or early users. Innovation actions are all about real-world testing and deployment. If your technology is already validated in the lab and you're ready to test it in the real-world conditions, such as factories or cities, if you have a mobility project or infrastructure with real users, then this is the proper funding program to do so. So oftentimes, you will see a call open both to identified as either an innovation action call or a research innovation action call. For this particular type of program, you'll need a strong consortium, ideally with industrial partners and also end users. And then you will also need a very clear path to market deployment. So the EU, with this type of programs, is looking to support solutions that are ready to scale already and to deliver an impact, particularly in areas like sustainability, green manufacturing, and digital transformation. So these are the areas, the topics that we talked about before. Think of maybe pilot sites, user validation, maybe even full tech deployment. So piloting and deploying your innovation in real life environments is what these innovation actions are about. So let's make this more concrete with an example that we created. Is a dummy example that we made up, because Horizon Europe can still feel quite abstract. So imagine a project like this one. The idea is to develop and deploy AI-powered digital twin technology and to optimize energy use in 3 energy-intensive manufacturing sectors across Europe. The solution will be piloted, validated, and prepared for market scaling. In practice, this means pilots in real factories or industrial environments, real users, real data, real performance indicators, right? So Horizon projects are all about collaboration. The majority of the projects, as you saw even in any of the previous slides, or in most of them, they require a minimum of 3 consortium partners from 3 different EU countries. The consortium usually is quite balanced. So we see there, we have the SME that is also the consortium coordinator, which is usually the tech developer. And he's from Italy and develops and integrates this AI-powered digital twin. Then we have, as part of the consortium, the end users who are testing the solution, the steel plant, the chemical plant, the paper factory, the three energy-intensive manufacturing sectors that the project idea is about. And then we have also someone from public sector. It's really important for European Union to see that the municipalities are also on board with such projects. We might have another tech tech partner that focuses on the infrastructure, so maybe the hardware part. And then we have association and dissemination partners for the business development, which is maybe dissemination is maybe a fancier word for business development. So a partner from the industry already that could make that connections for this consortium, for this project that will help with the networking, and that could help scaling faster or commercializing the solution faster. Funding is shared across partners. So for SMEs, usually in the innovation actions, the funding rate is usually around 70%. And you see that actually the development of the tech is not the most important part, but the deployment, the testing in real life environment in the 3 pilot sites is what gets the most money. And then all the others. So in total, this is quite a large project in terms of grant, and also it's quality extensive as it will last for 3 years. So the key takeaway here it is you don't need to invent everything yourself. Your value can be one specific technology, one specific pilot site, or one specific hardware component of this solution. And you are in the funding world. If you want to maybe dip your toe in the EU funding without writing extensive 50-page proposals, cascade calls are where you can start. They are perfect for like quick pilots, tech validation, and entering into the funding ecosystem. It's actually this type of funding is often the easiest entry point into EU funding, especially if this is your first time. Here's how it works. So large Horizon Europe projects receive funding, and part of that budget is then redistributed to SMEs through open calls. That's what cascading means. What's important for you? You apply as a single company. You don't need a consortium. Applications usually are short and much simpler. Decisions are fast, often within a few weeks. So typical funding amounts range, obviously they are lower in terms of amounts, range between 20,000 or 150,000 euros. And projects usually last a few months. Cascade funding is ideal for testing your technology, for integrating into existing platforms, validating it with end users, so small projects, or maybe running a pilot in a real life environment. Another big advantage of this is the success rate. So usually the funding that is provided directly from the European Commission, the funding that we're talking about right now, the success rate is low, or maybe not to discourage you, it's very competitive. So because it's open to Europe, to the entire European Union, then obviously there are a lot of applications. So it's very competitive. But then I think it's very worth it because of the amount or the grant you get and the very transparent evaluation. So because these calls are more focused and less bureaucratic, then the SMEs often have a much higher success rate compared to the maybe standard Horizon calls. So if you're thinking EU funding sounds interesting, but Horizon seems too big for us, you can first look at this type of cascade funding, which is usually the best place to start. And where you can look for this, these are maybe two resources of where you can find such cascade funding, the Next Generation Internet, and Funding and Tenders Portal is your go-to place for any open calls available. You can search there based on the program, based on whether it's an open call or a future call or expected call and so on. So what should be your takeaway from Horizon Europe? Don't just assume it's just for research labs or universities. If your company is solving real challenges with new innovative technologies and you're willing to collaborate, because most of the calls are have a consortium requirement, this program can fund your next breakthrough. So don't be afraid of Horizon Europe. It's an easy, it's an open and available instrument for you to access. Very often, though, we see companies use cascade funding as their first EU project, and then they move on to larger Horizon projects, or maybe Life or Digital Europe projects with much more confidence, because now they know how implementation of a funding project, EU-funded project, looks like. So I will show you now two specific funding opportunities that we will discuss in depth: Life program and Digital Europe program. We have chosen these for you as it will give you some basis to explain an important topic: how to deal with or join European consortia. So to be successful in Life program, you must have, there are two very important keywords: green and impact. So you must have a green technology, but it also should provide, your project should provide significant impact. So Life, the topics that you usually see in Life are around clean energy and efficiency, circular economy, climate change, mitigation and or climate change adaptation, decarbonization, and sustainable mobility and buildings. These are, let's say, the main topics that every year have opened up through calls for funding, for proposals. So Life supports very practical projects, the not academia projects. It supports market-ready projects with a higher TRL of 7 to 9, so very close to the commercialization. The aim of the project should be to scale it, to replicate it. So if your company is piloting, for example, or has piloted a green or energy efficient technology that can deliver measurable environmental benefits, LIFE could be the perfect program to support your large scale deployment. So what is important here, and I will stress it again, the impact, the measurable impact. The LIFE program requires you to commit to certain KPIs that will be measured in terms of impact throughout your project implementation. Environmental impact. How from, I don't know, how much less land will have drought, for example, because of your technology, or how many, I don't know, the CO2 emissions that were reduced, the quantity of CO2 emission reduced because of your technology. So LIFE is about, as I mentioned, this green transformation, green transition. So why is it relevant for you? It funds all these deployment and demonstration. So it helps you on the last steps before the commercialization of your solutions. Here on the right part, you see the basics. So besides SMEs, also corporate apply for this type of funding, municipalities, NGOs, a lot of NGOs actually, and environmental associations, R&D centers, individual or in consortia. So LIFE is not a program that has mandatory consortia component, but is something that we, for example, at Civita, we encourage, and it's for us, it's mandatory to develop such a consortium. And I will tell you, and you will find out later today, why this is so important. Eligible costs are the ones generally covered, personnel, equipment. You can cover everything really in terms of your technological development while in the project, from technical and project management to equipment buying and installation, demonstration of piloting sites, even subcontracting, accessing external experts are also eligible costs. Communication dissemination, obviously, and also you have a 7% flat rate for direct costs. The funding rate is around 60%, between 60 and 75%, depending on the topic and the project type. So project duration can be anything from 2 to 5 years. Usually it's between 2 and 3, well, either 2 or 3 for most projects. So LIFE is a beautiful funding program that asks not only to showcase your technology works, but also to start thinking about commercializing this technology and finding clients. So here is an overview of topics from LIFE. Just to give you an idea, as you see, they are very practical. For clean energy, you have installation of solar or battery systems, You have, for industrial energy, you have the heat recovery system in cement or glass plants, circular economy. A lot of it works around zero waste, food processing line, or anything related to zero waste, or plastic reduction, sustainable construction and renovation. It can be piloting low carbon building materials, maybe smart retrofitting technologies, innovation or eco-innovation in water management is something that EU is very interested in. So you have maybe a closed loop water recycling system for industrial sites, or a smart leak detection system, and sustainable mobility for urban, maybe an electrification of urban logistic fleet, or electric cars, charging infrastructure, and so on. But as you can see, they all have impact related to it. So when you apply for LIFE, there's certain mandatory KPIs that you have to choose from. It's a very extensive list. But they are set. Some of them are set, like air quality, water conservation, and emission reduction. And you have to choose the one that best fits your solution, but also you have to estimate a baseline and what's expected, or what you will achieve at the end of the project, and within the 5 years after the end of the project. So these are not research projects in a lab. These are real-life deployments by SMEs and industrial actors who are building sustainable solutions at scale. So if your innovation creates measurable green impact, there's likely a LIFE topic for you. Now I will show you even more in depth how a project could look like. This is a made-up example, as I said before, with Horizon, to show you how a LIFE project could look like. Yes, in this project, the idea is to deploy and demonstrate a modular chemical recycling system into EU cities to reduce landfill dependence and to recover value from non-recyclable plastics. So why we think this would be a good fit for the LIFE program? Because it has a concrete climate impact, the waste that is diverted from the landfill. So instead of putting waste in the ground, you recycle that waste. It's scalable and has a replicable model, so it can be replicated throughout Europe fast. And it has, if you look on the right, on the left, a strong EU-wide consortium. So looking at the consortium, we have the SME, who is the coordinator and the developer of the technology. In theory, they could apply on their own, right? The LIFE program doesn't, it's not mandatory for LIFE to have a consortium. Why we would not let them apply on their own? It's because we believe that partners, all of these partners, not many like in other programs, but these partners are handpicked to enhance the project and the chances of winning the funding. Because, for example, we have the municipality that provides the site. Why is this important? Well, the municipality is the end user who is being able to show that authorities are on board. So being able to involve them, we are now sending a strong signal that there is a strong interest in our company. Of course, we can support this by providing letters of support or memoranda. So we don't need necessarily to have them as partners, but having one end user, potential client involved, and in this case is the municipality who provides the pilot site and collects and assesses all the KPIs, will actually add value to the project. We then have two other partners that are not crucial, but they again add value. One is an NGO, an environmental NGO. EU is expecting the info to be disseminated. So in addition, we want the business development to be happening, right? So dissemination, as I mentioned, is another fancy word for business development. So this NGO could help the project access possible clients, help with the network, with setting up events, participating in other events, and so on. The university can help with maybe the life cycle assessment, the LCA, with monitoring the KPIs. And so impact, as I mentioned, is really important to having someone. So having someone measuring these KPIs could help you your project to fulfill this aim of having a very important environmental impact. Below, you also see an example of the funding structure. The larger portion goes for deployment. All activities are reflected also in the budget. And so you also see here on the right again some examples of real life funded project for your inspirations, biogas upgrading, recycling, reuse of textile waste, heat to power solutions for manufacturing processes. So there are very, very many interesting life projects that have already been funding. And I'm sure somewhere there in one of your SMEs, there lies a very successful life project. So I will now confuse you a bit and jump straight into our second example with Digital Europe program. So besides green, digital is the second buzzword going around Europe funding world these days, right? Digital, digitalization versus green, sustainability, environment, right? So these are the two main areas that are of major interest to the European Commission. And it made it very clearly by providing enough funding opportunities for these types of projects. In terms of some maybe additional trends present, I can comment that bigger and bigger importance will be given to military and or the dual use solutions. So solutions, technology that are used also in the military, but can also be used for in civil environments. Also, another trend and maybe another importance that is very much given is to the critical raw materials. So there's again funding available for that. But Digital Europe is perfect for companies that already have a digital solution wishing to deploy. So again, no research here. And now we just need to scale it. So test it with clients or integrate it into real operational environments. Topics supported in Digital Europe are artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, advanced computing and data infrastructure, digital skills and talent development. It's important. And industrial digital transformation. As we speak, there's several open calls for Digital Europe, mostly in cybersecurity for SMEs. So SME support in uptaking cybersecurity or AI in AI security or AI cybersecurity topics. Why is this relevant? It is the same as life because it supports adoption of mature technologies with high TRL. With such grants that are close to market, the return of investment is faster, right? So with the journey of funding, this may be a good entry point because you do not need large consortia here, but you need to have maybe a few partners, key partners that are enough and that add real value to your solution. Who can apply? SMEs is fine enough if you have a super ambitious technology. Cybersecurity hubs are also part of this, and research institutions. Typical grant amount is in the millions, so it's similar to life. Very much similar in terms of also the eligible costs and the funding rate, which is between 70 and 50% and 70%. So I know we've had a lot of times this question: why does the EU? Why doesn't the EU fund 100%? And why should we also come up with such a large amount? So the projects that are going to be finding through such programs like LIFE or DEP, Digital Europe, they are so close to the market that you, as the solution provider, you are expected to start selling very soon after the project will end. So your motivation should be to co-invest. You have the solution, it's already been tested and sort of validated. You're getting ready to commercialize it. So your risks are not that high as of maybe those that are in earlier TRL. For example, in research projects, there's a high chance that after you do the research, you will find out that it doesn't work. So there's a higher risk of failing. But your solution has already gone through the development. And so EU expects that you should co-invest in your solution. It doesn't feel the need, that the necessity to co-invest so much because of these lower risks. So we now deep dive into maybe a cybersecurity topic. As an example, at this point, there are some calls open, as I mentioned, for cybersecurity, and there is a large amount available now. The deadline is end of March, but it is expected to have other open calls throughout this year and next year especially. So the project idea here is to develop and deploy an AI-powered cybersecurity platform that supports early threat detection and real-time incident response in critical infrastructure sectors: energy, water, transport. The platform will be piloted in 3 countries with national authorities involved. So here the end user, again, is a critical infrastructure sector. So besides the coordinator, who again is the SME, who develops this technology and then integrates it into the security operations centers, you have energy providers as the end users, and the national security operations centers and municipalities, research center, and the industry association for dissemination. So the consortium is built in such a way that it brings added value to the project. So each partner is chosen specifically as either an end user or a supporter for dissemination, or a supporter as an infrastructure sector. So we have tech developer, but we also have national authorities, as that is really important for assessors to see that authorities are on board with the project. If you see, there is a small flag feature next to the partner. So why is that? Because having diversity in countries that are represented in the consortium is, again, very important for the assessors of such projects. It's always strategic to have various countries represented, because the purpose of European Union is to have solutions that will be fast adopted in all countries of the European Union. So by you showing that you already have established connections in several countries, that will give you an additional point or value towards the assessment. If you look at the budget, there is also development of the solution. So as I mentioned, for both DEP, that Digital Europe, and also LIFE, the purpose or the TRL is very close to commercialization of the solution. Development is accepted, but it should not be the main part of the project. A development of the technology should already have happened, mostly. So definitely it shouldn't be tested in a lab still, or you shouldn't just come up with an idea to add something to the technology that you haven't tested already, because the technology should already be there, and you should maybe tweak it to the pilots that you use or are part of in the project. So if you look at the budget, this development is part of this, but it's equally important to have the piloting, the implementation in the piloting sites. Here specifically, we're talking about these critical infrastructure energy providers. So I hope I provided you with a good foundation for the following part of the webinar, and that is how to create or join a consortium. So let's start with a simple question. What is a consortium? Why does this matter? So a consortium is really just a group of organizations, usually from different countries, ideally, as mentioned, that work together to deliver an EU-funded project. This group has an agreement, it's called the consortium agreement, that is signed after the project is won, the project application is won, and it's regulated by this consortium agreement for the work among themselves. The EU doesn't fund the single company projects in most of the programs, especially the large ones. Instead, it encourages international cooperation, shared expertise, and impact that spreads across several borders. That's why consortia are the default model usually when we're talking about accessing funding programs. Why we recommend you to have a consortium, even though it is not necessarily required. First, to ensure cross-border cooperation. We are tapping into a joint EU budget, so we need to show a European value, not just a national value. So for that, it is needed to have more countries represented in this consortium. As an SME, though, you have also, as a second point, you are an expert of your technology, but a project does not stop with your technology. It needs testing, as we mentioned, piloting, where you will need the end user. It needs certification and regulatory aspects, LCAs. All these are specific requirements that very probably you do not have as an expertise within your SME. So you are interested to bring together this complementary expertise within your consortium. So another reason is even if the consortium can be located in Croatia, all of it, all the partners, you still will need to achieve or to show the broader impact of your project. So that is you will actually need to sell all over Europe. Your project will need to have, after implementation, a broader impact. So the internationalization of your technology is a key element that is supported by the European Union, and having a consortium could be one way to do it. But don't worry, you don't need to be a coordinator to get involved. In fact, most SMEs join first as tech providers, like delivering a specific tool, a specific system, or a module of a specific technology. They may be joining as partners of the consortium, taking maybe responsibility for a part of the implementation of the work plan, so a few tasks. They also may be demo sites or offer pilots. So test the solution as or host activities that test the solution. So these roles allow smaller companies or maybe less experienced companies to build the experience, to build the references and the credibility, because you will see European Union sometimes doesn't even ask your revenue status for last year, but they will ask you for funding experience. So, and then over time, you as an SME can grow into a leadership position within a consortium. Although Usually, as you saw in all the examples that we gave you, an SME as a tech provider can be usually the coordinator. But as mentioned here, also you see the example in the Digital Europe program. It can have various roles. You can actually be in any of the roles there, depending on your expertise. When creating your first EU project, the best place to start isn't a big matchmaking platform. So a lot of times we have this question, okay, so you tell me that I need consortium partners, but where do I find these consortium partners? I'm an SME, people don't listen to me, or I'm an SME from Romania or Croatia. How can I find these end users or these LCA providers and so on? So I will show you a few sources where you can find it. And the first one, it may be surprising, but you don't find them on platforms that matchmake. And you will see even EU provides this type of platforms, which can be useful, but as a second step, you will find them in your contact list. These types of partners are often already in your ecosystem. Start with who you know. Ask yourself, who can benefit the most from my technology, right? If you already work with companies that might use or adopt your solution, maybe you can consider making them part of your project team. So there are two types of partners especially relevant here. The uptaker is so this is more of a EU terminology. So the uptaker are the organization who will use your innovation during the project. Like, you can think of them as real life testers. They give you feedback and prove that your product works in practice. So, and by being part of your consortia, they will get your cutting edge tech for free. So this is the easiest way to sell it to possible end users to be part of your consortia. If you're going to be part of this project, you get access firsthand to an innovative technology that will be adapted specifically to your needs because you will be testing it. You get this edge technology for free. So then you get it customized specifically for you, and on top of everything, you even get money for this. So that's maybe a way to sell it to these uptakers. But then you also have the off-takers, on the other hand, that are partners who plan to adopt your or purchase your technology after it's developed, and they can often help justify the market relevance. And usually with these, they can provide a letter of support. Letters of support are very important, and they are expected in all of the EU-funded applications. So this is great for showing long-term commercial potential, which evaluators really love. And this kind of partnership creates real value. Not only do you get funding, you also build relationships that can lead to future sales. So from the initiation of this application, let's say you already are in contact with your uptakers and your off-takers and tell them, look, Here, I have this awesome technology that I'm going to develop. Will you be interested in maybe testing it or buying it? And then you already establish this connection and the network that will help you tremendously once you reach the commercialization stage. So let's say you don't have the right contacts yet. That's perfectly normal. There are also structured ways to find partners. Here you can find some channels. The EU's own matchmaking platforms are a great starting point, especially for Horizon Europe or Digital Europe. You can see who's been active in similar topics and maybe reach out with a well-written intro. This can be useful also these platforms for dissemination partners, regulatory insights, certification. Mostly, you could use these platforms for supporting activities. So I wouldn't look for like your technology or industry partner within this type of platforms, but for the supporting activities, they could be useful. Horizontal organizations are really valuable. So not, as mentioned, not for your main partners, but maybe for these associate activities. Online professional networks and LinkedIn groups, you can also access to find this type of partners. In these areas, because they are like very much business oriented, keep it very short and focused. Introduce your idea, what kind of partners are you looking for? But it is less easy to find expression of interest in these LinkedIn groups, for example. The ecosystem players are another good option. You can identify these. You may already even participated in such accelerators or other types of similar activities, ecosystem activities. And if you have an idea of active organizers of such events, then participating is a very good idea in such networking activities and so on. So it helps identifying the partners, and it helps further on with the dissemination you will be doing later for your solution. EDICs, so European digital innovation hubs like Hopero or the AI and Gaming one, and the networks like the Enterprise Europe network can directly introduce you to relevant organizations, especially if you're looking for international partners. But remember, you don't need a big consortium. You just need the right mix of expertise and the roles and the credibility. And then if you're strategic in thinking about this and proactive, the right partners, I'm sure, are out there for each of you. So how to approach a prospective partner? When it comes to joining EU-funded projects, finding the right consortium is only half of this challenge. The other half is making the right impression, right? So all these do's and don'ts sound basic. I will not go through them. But what I wanted to say is that you have to begin to create your mindset for success. So although these ideas are known, it is worth mentioning because they have been tried and tested by us, as we also do this every time we look for a partner. On the do side, it's important to be precise and proactive, to explain clearly what your company does, what your role is in the project, and how could your expertise bring value to the consortium. We often use a short one-pager or capability deck that is often the best way to introduce yourself. This should include who you are, your relevant expertise and experience, your proposed contribution, and so on. When we look, as I mentioned, for a client, we always create this short one-pager that is very, very helpful and actually is required. A lot of possible consortium partners ask for a one-pager. Make sure you have that. Also, make sure to reference specific calls or topics so they see you've done your research. And this is key, reach out early. I cannot stress enough. Most EU funding programs have open calls yearly. Like DEF, for example, has open calls now with deadline in March. And we know, for example, that LIFE will have a new call announced in April with a deadline in September. So if you're planning to apply for a LIFE funding, prepare early with starting contacting for possible partners, because it will take several meetings, it will take time, and leaving it for the last minute will create additional pressure. We recently had one consortium where the talks with a possible partner started very late, and because the partner was huge and their decision making was very time consuming, the coordinator had to drop that possible partner, which was a very important part within the application, in literally the last day before deadline. So, and it wasn't anyone's fault. Large companies move slower, so take that into consideration. So start early with building up and finding partners for your consortium. Explain what you bring to the table and they can use it in their own company, and why they can use it, and what's the benefit of using your technology in their own company is essential. Okay. On the downside, I will leave you to go through them. So I will now show you the last part, which is crucial for your company to be prepared, and how to create a funding strategy for European funding. So before jumping into a EU call, you have to take a moment to reflect. Is your company really ready? So at the basic level, readiness means having a clear innovation, something new, relevant, something that is needed on the market. First introduction of any innovation is the state of the art, so the current solutions that are out there. What is the problem? What are the existing solutions? Why is yours better? I would also mention here that a lot of time when we're talking with clients that have very innovative breakthrough solutions, they say that there's no competition for them. And that is very wrong. There is always competition. Surely they must miss part of your specifics. They could maybe be, or you could overcome them completely. Surely they can, you beat them on price, but not listing competition is always a red flag for any assessor. So having a clear overview shows that you are stronger, knowing your competition, knowing why you're better than them, shows strength. Also, you should have someone internally who can lead this process. So an assigned project manager from the beginning, or founder who takes ownership of this project. This should be a person allocated to coordinate both the application but also the implementation. And it's really important for the success of the implementation part. You should have some ability to co-finance. Not all calls, as you saw, are 100% funded. Mostly, so you will need budgetary flexibility. Usually 30, maybe 40% should be your co-investment, and you should be prepared to do this. But again, this co-investment can be seen in two different ways. One, in which you say, I have to come up with 40% of the project budget. That's huge. I don't have that money. Why European Union doesn't give me the entire money if they want us to prosper and develop as a continent or as an entity? Another point of view, the one that I'm suggesting you should use, is connected to what I said earlier, that the aim of this funding is the company growth, and funding is a tool for it. So the other point of view is saying that for my solution that I'm very passionate about, that I really want to develop and I will develop and grow, there is someone out there who is willing to give me 60% of the money. So if you're, as I mentioned, if your mindset is set like that, I'm going to grow my company, and I'm sure as an entrepreneur, all of you are very passionate about your company and what you're doing there. So if you apply the same mindset, the same passion to this funding, seeing it as just a means or support for your company growth, then this 60% support from the European Union sounds differently, doesn't it? I will then go for credible references, whether from clients, pilot projects, or national funding. So you have to have this references of previous projects that you've been involved in. So anything from local funding, as I mentioned, pilots that you've, collaborations, professional collaborations with universities and so on, they show you can deliver. It depends on the programs. In life, for example, nobody asks you to provide information about your last year's revenue. So even as a small company, you might get the project. What they're really after, though, is the track record. So you would be asked to show that you have the expertise, whether you as a company or you as the people in the company. So for example, you can have a very good CTO that previously invented something. That is also part of your expertise and part of your own references. So now from the evaluator side, what they're really looking for, they assess these three key criteria, which can vary, but this is just a general overview. Excellence or relevance. Is this technology sound? Is the methodology clear? Is the idea truly innovative? The tool was super ambitious, but experts had doubts about the feasibility. That happens sometimes. So it has to be ambitious, but it has to be feasible. So don't overdo it. Impact. Will it scale? Does it align with the EU priorities like Green Deal or digital transformation? It is from the EU budget, or is it so if it's from the European budget, you have to show European impact. So these criterias are apply across. So sorry, there was one more implementation. So it is assessed. The assessor thinks whether or looks at whether your team is capable. You will have to submit team profiles. They will look whether your work plan is realistic and clear, if there's connection between tasks and there's a clear timeline and correct timeline, well estimated. They will also look at partners and if the partners are covering all the needed roles and so on. So these criteria plus apply across most programs, and understanding them really helps you prepare better proposals. The assessment criteria are usually also included in the call proposals. So being EU ready isn't about being perfect, really. It's about being very credible, focused, and prepared to grow through collaboration. And in the last part, I will just go briefly through 2 parts, two or three more slides. The EU funding landscape is, as I mentioned, rich with many opportunities. Success lies in finding the right program for your TRL level. And you see here for each TRL which type of program best fits. You can use this matrix to see whether you're whether you're in the development stage or towards your commercialization stage, which funding options are aligned with your TRL, type of business and ambition, and so on. So in the last part, I just want to briefly show you what we're talking about, how to build this funding roadmap. So we are assuming you are starting with EU funding. A good insight is that maybe think of early project as your credibility builders. Even with EU funding, you need to build, as I mentioned, references, certain positions for yourself, so you can start small and then grow. Many companies assume EU funding is only for big, complex projects, but as we've seen in reality, success often starts or can start small. So a strategic approach is about building the momentum. Start with cascade funding or national calls. They are simpler, they are faster, and they help build that experience. And that this track record, if it's coming from EU funding, it will build a strong credibility for larger projects. Then use these smaller grants as a stepping stone towards larger international projects. You can use EU funding to maybe even impress investors and maybe combine public EU funding with private investment funding. That's another option. Over time, you're not just developing technology, keep that in mind, you are building your track record. So it's not about just achieving an objective with that funding, it's about building one block over the other. Stronger proposals, better networks, and more credibility. So also, don't think in silos, right? Combining public funding with private funding is one of the smartest strategies, actually. EU projects validate your innovation, and that gives confidence to investors to invest. One grant can lead to maybe a partnership, and then a partnership can maybe lead to scaling your solution. So starting small and creating this snowball will be the best option for you. It will get you ready for a project. So bottom line, EU funding, and we wrote it in pink. EU funding is not a one-off. It's a journey you can scale up over time. It's a growth journey, and every step makes the next one easier for you. If you think like this, then the EU world will be much clearer. And this is again a made-up example of funding strategy and how it will look like for a specific company. We took a company profile, a tech SME developing energy efficient AI-based control system for industrial building. Its strategic goals, so the company's strategic goals, are to validate and demonstrate the solution in industrial testbeds, to expand across EU, to strengthen digital security and resilience. So funding strategy needs to be rooted in these company strategic goals. You don't just access funding to get money. You access funding to achieve your strategic goals. So how is that reflected in the funding roadmap? Each step is one funding opportunity. Step one, cascade funding. You have a technical pilot within a small factory. Then you develop a large-scale deployment with Digital Europe program. After that, you maybe want to contact municipalities and demonstrate environmental impact of your solution within these municipal sites. And then when your funding is almost ready, your solution is almost ready for commercialization, you access Cybersecurity Digital Europe again, yes, to strengthen digital infrastructure, sorry. And then at the end, maybe you want to access Horizon Europe for deployment across Europe and replication with EU partners, which, if you look at the strategic goals, these all steps, they're all build your solution towards your company strategic goals. So this is how a roadmap will look like, and this is something that we've done several times, many times with clients, supporting them in finding these roles. So while maybe this I will let you go through it. The key takeaways from today. And maybe if Anna, are you here? No? If not, maybe if you can think of questions, you can ask them now, if you have any questions, for a few more minutes. If not, you can always contact our partners, the AI and Gaming EDIC in Croatia, if you are from Croatia. If you are from another country and you need support, you can contact me, and I will leave my, I think you already have my email address, but I will also leave it in the chat area. So if you have questions, I'm happy to answer. And So I hope this was a useful presentation for you. I will stop the recording now.